Hi, so today we're going to build up this Coh&Co Eric commuter type bike. I actually had a crash last year and I don't know, I just fancied buying an upright straight bar bike to recover from a broken shoulder. So I was looking at an email, a trade email that comes through periodically, and this brand, Coh&Co, this bike was on that email. Now what drew my attention to it was that it had Gates carbon belt drive, and the design of this bike is really unique. So we're going to build this bike up and see where we go from there. Right, so first thing we've got to do is wrestle this out of the box, but before we start I will just say we did get a trade account with this company and we can offer this bike in the UK, so if you're interested in one of these, do get in touch. They do offer also a road bike, and they offer wooden frames, cargo bikes and a few other items. So first thing we're doing is getting the bike out of the packaging. I had a little look at these wheels because they're tubeless ready, although there was no branding on them, but they're a lovely wheel. And then we start stripping off. This has got the N-lock system on it. This is a lockable stem that rotates 90 degrees when you leave the bike by taking the key out. And it's also got a lock inside the handlebars. Now this was actually a bit intriguing, this little bafflement on my face is because we realised this is a European bike, which means it's left-hand drive. So as we all know in the UK, our front brake is always our right and the back brake is always the left, and this was the opposite way round. So left brake was front, right brake was rear. So that's something we addressed while we were building it. We swapped them round. So we just put the handlebars on there loosely at the moment, getting the rest of the packaging off the frame just to check it over, make sure it arrived all okay, which it did. It was well packaged, this bike, so there's no fear of them arriving damaged. They were well packaged. The outer box got damaged and the saddle did actually go through the outer box, but that's something I'm sure they'll address on our behalf. So by changing the brakes around, we had to just get these cables out of the fittings on the end of the brakes, so we just used a screwdriver just to square them up with a hole and then just swapped them around. It was actually really easy, just a straightforward job. It did intrigue us at the time. It's like, oh, it's left-hand drive, so it's quite funny. Anyway, now we're just putting the skewer in the wheel and offering that up. There's an awful gap, or a large gap, between the top of the tyre and the bridge of the forks. I think this bike will also take a 29er. This is on 27.5s, so I think it'll take a bigger tyre size, and that's why the gap is there. They actually come with a cabled braking system. It's a dual action brake pad, so you're not pushing against one side of the brake pads. So we just set that up in the centre of the wheel. We've got aluminium pedals fit in here. The bike comes with a slightly different pedal, a trekking pedal, but I wanted a larger flat pedal, so we fitted our own. So this is just going on here, but we can do this if you wanted that. And we torque the pedals up. I'm a fan of torquing all fittings. It was something this bike did need doing. So we're now just fitting the front mud guards. They have a nice low curved mud guard. They look lovely once they're on. So this is just unwrapping the mud guards here. You can see the bridge fitting is a very tall fitting to allow for that big gap in the front forks. Comes with these nice little fittings. They're relatively straightforward to fit. The fittings are on the inside of the forks, which was nice. And yeah, we're just fitting the fittings here. This was a bit fiddly with the wheeling. I should have perhaps done this first, but you can't. It's hard to then line up the mud guard to get the spacing around the tyre right without the wheel in, so it's a double-edged sword, that one. And we're just fitting the rear mud guard here with the stays. I actually had two sets of stays. I actually set this up slightly differently to the way they're shown on their website. On their website they have one stay to the bike frame and the other stay mounted to the other stay, so the stays are linked. But I felt that there were two fittings on the bike. I think on the website they offer a rear rack and you can use the other fitting on the bike for the rack, but I decided to use both fittings on the bike for the mud guards. So we had to just adapt this a little bit. We had to shorten the stay, we had to bend the stay so that it didn't foul the braking system. But one thing we had, notice here the tensioner for the belt drive was loose when it arrived. I wasn't very happy about that, but also no matter how you played it, the fitting for the mudguard would foul that. So you can see we'll address that in a moment. That was a little bit of maybe poor design. It is what it is, I suppose, but we did alter that and made sure that it didn't foul. So we're just adjusting that front stay to suit our needs, which wasn't quite how the bike would normally have come, but it was how I felt it would make a stronger mudguard. So we're just shortening those stays. I don't like having things sticking out, so I do like to get them right. So we're just shortening those now. These are stainless steel, so they take some sawing, which is also nice. File the edges, make sure there's no sharp edges. And then on they go. We just got to, this is offering it up for the first stage just to make sure the alterations we did work. So yeah, that one's in nicely. Now with this one we were just a little bit concerned that it would foul the mounting bolt for the caliper. So we're just going to sort out a spacer here. We just literally used a brake spacer from a normal brake block. They're aluminium so it won't corrode. And then just sat that inside there just to clear that bolt. So you can see now we've got good clearance there, 1 millimetre or so, and that works well. So yeah, so this is the fitting where no matter, you know, whether I'd used the one that I'm now undoing or not, the fitting that we're about to fit would have fouled. We actually turned it around to give a little bit more clearance there. But whatever we did, the new fitting from the manufacturer would have fouled that tensioner for the belt drive. It just would not meet the hole. So you can see if we offer it up there without anything in it, it's touching this point that I just pointed to. So we decided, the fact this was loose anyway, we removed this and we just gave it a little Bikespeeds modification. So we're just going to skim that off just to clear the fitting, and it'll all go back together. There was a groove in this, so just by skimming this off, it mechanically would not lower its strength or positioning on the bike frame. So it did no harm to do this to it. It still works in the same way mechanically, and now that fitting goes in there nicely and clears that top edge. So now we're just marking up this stage shorten to get the lengths right, and we just again saw that off in the vise, using the little bit we sawed off to get the length for the other side, assuming that all things are equal. Give that little file up, get rid of them sharp edges again. And then that's ready to fit, so we're now fitting that part. And yeah, these are actually, I like these mudguards. I like the profile of them. They were nice once they were on. So the bridge here, this was something we were had to fathom out a little bit. We noticed that wherever we put it with the tyre, it wasn't in the centre of the bracket. So either we had to alter the bracket or something was wrong. So we put this little set square against the frame and realised the bracket is perfect. But you can see when I move that to where it would mount, the tyre is to the very left of the mudguard. So we began to realise that something was more amiss than the fitting of the mudguards, and we realised that where the dropout is, one side you couldn't get anything in, the other side we had about 3 or 4 millimetres of space there where we could drop an Allen key in. We realised the wheel wasn't in the frame square. Because it hasn't got 2 chain stays or 2 seat stays, it's very hard to line that wheel up. But we quickly realised that it was wrong, so we actually undid that, obviously readjusted the brake, all this sort of thing, got the wheel in nice and square, and then we were happy to continue fitting the mudguards with the wheel into the mudguard square. So yeah, that was just from the factory really, it just wasn't quite set square. The other issue we had here was that the gears needed indexing. Whether that wheel had took a knock in transit and wasn't very tight in the first place, maybe it had moved, that's maybe a debate for another day, but I think it was tight enough. I think it just hadn't been quite done correctly at the factory. So now we just torque up the stem bolts here from where we put the handlebar on, and then we just run around the bike with a torque wrench. We quickly realised that I don't think this bike had a torque wrench used on it in the factory. There were a lot of loose bolts, as you can see here. This one moved quite a bit, and yeah, everything just needed torquing up correctly. These had little nylon bushes on them, so we used a very low torque on these. But even then, they were almost finger tight. I'm surprised they, hadn't been torqued. And then finally, we give the old tyres a pump up. Get some exercise there, marginal gains and all that. I've never gone for an air compressor pump because I do actually like the marginal gains of pumping these tyres up every day. When you're doing 20 or 30 tyres in a day, it's good exercise, so I don't mind doing it. So now it's on the floor and we just got to get the saddle height right. So we undo the, this was lovely, this bracket for the saddle clamp, like the seat post clamp, is lovely. So I know my measurements, so I was just getting that to correct. I had to actually reduce it by 5mm because the, reduce it by 5mm because the pedal arms are longer than what I'm used to. And the saddle was very loose, so we had to make sure we torqued that up correctly. And there we have the beautiful Coh&Co carbon belt drive.